Hey guys, how's it going? Robert Warshak here, and we've got some nice Rise of Shadow cards to take a look at and review. We are just over 2 weeks until the release of the next expansion, so we're getting there, and as we get closer, you guys know they dump more and more cards at us at a time, so I decided to kind of break it up. We'll cover like roughly anywhere between like 10-ish, 5 to 10 cards per review. I'm not going to review every card because not every card's going to be worth reviewing. But so far, we do have some pretty cool stuff, and let's get into it. We've got Togwaggle Scheme. I have no idea why there was a card animation that just fell right there. I've just changed that. I expected like some sort of fade, and all of a sudden more stuff happened, which was it's pretty exciting. Well, let's keep it simple. It's just a card review, Rob. We got to simmer down. So we got Togwaggle Scheme. It's a 1-mana card. Choose a minion, shuffle one copy of it into your deck, and it upgrades each turn. So as we know, as this card sticks in your hand, very similar to the Hagatha's scheme, it does 1 damage and then it'll do 2 and 3. This will shuffle 1, 2, 3, and there's been many memes of this card already with like rogues in this card, and they're all holding like a bunch of Cold Light Oracles. Obviously Cold Light Oracle being a wild card, but the ability to basically never fatigue with this card is pretty crazy, because as we know, there's a lot of decks that don't rely on fatigue, but like Control Warrior, for example, you know, it does have ways to shuffle cards back into the deck, so it does fatigue later in the game, versus a Warlock who uses, you know, its hero power ability to draw a bunch of cards and they fatigue much faster. So Rogue never basically being able to fatigue because of this, because you could shuffle 5-6 cards in your deck. You do that twice or even once. I mean, it's just like getting a third of your deck back, very similar to like Academic Espionage, adding 10 cards to your deck and things of that nature. So also, choose a minion. Can be used on your minion, your opponent's minion. So I mean, we don't know all of the new legendary minions that are coming, or any of the like the new combos that this could be used with, but obviously this is a very, very powerful card for 1 mana. And the fact that you can shuffle, you know, let's say 5 or 6 copies of, like, I don't know, let's think of a great minion like Deathwing, or like a Nixia, I don't know, Ysera, maybe not Ysera, but you know what I'm saying, just really powerful legendary minions, and then just being able to almost play it every turn because you've put so many in your deck is absolutely insane for 1 mana. So heading to the next card, we have Swamp Queen Hagatha. This is a really interesting card, very similar to Kazakis, if anybody remembers Mean Streets, being able to kind of build your own spell. So, for example, in the video, it shows like a Lava Burst and a Bloodlust. Obviously, he targets a minion with a Lava Burst or a face, and then the Bloodlust triggers and he wins the game. So, like, really cool card. It's kind of slow, you know, playing a 7-mana 5/5 and not really getting anything immediately is very like not tempo oriented. This is more like, in my opinion, a slow, like a control card for sure. And then on top of that, you can't, because she costs 7 mana and it gives you a 5/5 for her, which costs 5 mana, you can't play both in the same turn. Obviously, that'd be really powerful. Like, definitely a very control-esque card. And the Hagatha's scheme that we saw before, dealing damage to everything on the board, was also a very control-oriented card. Next card we're going to look at is the Oblivitron. This is the Hunter legendary. And I don't know, Hunters just, they've always gotten shit legendaries, like, for the most part. And the deck still sees play. I mean, as we see now, Hunter is one of the most popular classes on ladder, and one of the most powerful decks out there. And, you know, you really only need the one true Hunter legendary, which is Savannah Highmane, which is crazy because you can actually run 2 of the legendaries in the deck of Savannah Highmane. For those of you who've been around long enough in Hearthstone, you understand that meme. For those who are like, Rob, it's not a legendary! That was not directed towards you guys. With 6 mana, 3/4 mech, Death Rattle, summon a mech from your hand and trigger its Death Rattle. So this is like a really, really, really powerful effect. And it's weird that they're giving like the Death Rattle synergy, like continuing on with the Hunter, because as we know, Cube Hunter, like the Death Rattle Hunter, is one of the most annoying decks you can play against. I mean, I hate the deck so much. I find it so annoying. So like, granted, this is like more of mechs, but it's like a mech Death Rattle now. So we'll see if like they give Hunter all these little, like, you know, like mech animals, you know what I mean? And like the animals either summon animals or buff more animals and things like that. But are they really animals if they're mechs? Probably not, right? But anyway, I mean, the picture's cool. It reminds me of like Nomuragan in World of Warcraft. I like that dungeon, even though it was kind of horrible. Like, the mechs were cool. Lazul's Scheme, Priest card, 0 mana. So whenever I see a 0 mana card, it's normally weaker. But 0 mana is just like it. 0 mana cards have always somehow made like themselves really powerful. For example, Hunter's Mark used to be 0 mana, and then it was 1 mana, and now it's 2 mana. Like, Wow. It went up 200%, actually infinite percents. Reduce the attack of an enemy minion by 1 until your next turn, upgrades each turn. So for 0 mana, you can basically make an enemy minion turn into Nutter Butter. It does nothing. There's a similar Warlock card that costs 1 mana and it reduced, your opponent's attack as well, and it lasts until the next turn, and it did all of them. So for 0 mana and reducing 1 minion's attack, and it has to be an enemy minion, obviously. I don't think reducing your own minion would be that great. I guess you could reduce your own minion, play Shadow Reaper Anduin in Wild, but okay, too much, Rob. But the 0 mana is like, it combos well with Lyra. You can... That's all I can think of. Like, I guess it works well with Shadow Priest too. On turn 6, you can like scheme and then Shadow Priest something. And like, if this is in your hand for a long time, that's kind of bad because it's taking up a hand slot. So I like, first thoughts, I was mentioning how good 0 mana spells look. This actually looks horrible. I'm not like, it looks bad. Like, why would I, like, you only have 30 cards in the deck and you want to put the best 30 cards in your deck as possible, and reducing an enemy's attack for 1 turn, unless we see like a lot more synergies with this reduce attack thing, like, copy an opponent's minion twice that has attack less than 0 or less than 1 or something like that. And then you little scheme, you do that, you get 2 of them, and bada bing, bada boom. But like, overall, this is like a very weak card by itself. Obviously, there's probably more to come, but as of now, very weak by itself. And then we have Madame Lazul. I don't know why she's so small. Let's actually make her slightly bigger. Work with me, work with me. Well, bam, she's slightly bigger now. 3 mana, 3/2 battlecry. Discover a copy of a card in your opponent's hand. So this, like, the second I read this, it just reminded me of the Gecko card that I was like in love with for the longest time. I'm like, this card's gonna be great. You get to see what's in your opponent's hand. You can pick the best card, and the card was like ass. Nobody played the card. It was just too slow. The fact that you had to wait to use him, because like if you draw him, he's useless that turn because he's just the Gecko, and then you had to wait, and then it would transform from there. But this card is like kind of the same thing as the Gecko, but you can play this card immediately, and then you get your choice to discover a card in your opponent's hand. And as we know, like if your opponent's playing some sort of combo deck or a control deck, they hold cards like Brawl and Reckless Fury, not that you're a warrior, but just for example, powerful AoE spells or powerful cards that, tech against other cards like Mojo Master. Like they hold those cards for quite some time. So being able to discover those, maybe will work in your favor sometimes. But overall, I think this is it's a card that you can play. It has no requirements, and generally cards in your opponent's deck are good. And, more than times than not, like unless your opponent has no cards in their hand, right? So if they only have like 1 card, this is kind of like bad against obviously maybe like aggressive style decks, but even like playing this on turn 3 against an aggressive style deck and then stealing like their 4-drop play. So first of all, what they're going to play on 4, or you get to see the other cards in their hand too. So like maybe they have 3 cards in their hand, you're wondering like what combo pieces they are or how far along they are, and you see that they have no combo pieces. You've got a little bit more time on your hands. So like there's a lot of like revealing / like knowing ahead of time like what this card is showing you. It's not necessarily the card you're getting, it's the information it also provides. Overall, I like her a lot more than the Gecko card. It's basically just an improved Gecko, which is awesome. All right, so heading on over to Rafam's Scheme, a 3 mana summon, a 1/1/1 imp, and it upgrades each turn. So as we know, the schemes, every turn it's in your hand, it upgrades +1, so you get 2 imps, 3 imps, 4 imps. So when I first read this, I was like, oh, you're gonna get two imps, and then 3 imps. I was like, oh man, that's crazy. But I mean, they're all just gonna be 1/1 imps. So like max, you're gonna spend 3 mana, and you're gonna get 7 1/1 imps. So you can look at this, first thoughts is like a Zoo deck, but Zoo has been like known for playing minions early on, turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4. And if you've got this card sitting in your hand for basically 6 turns to get it to 7, the game's normally over by turn 6 or 7. So it just seems like there was another card out there. It was like a tentacle card, and it says use all your mana, summon this many tentacles, and you could just play that on 6 regardless of this card like staying in your hand. So like the fact that this has to be in your hand and use up a card space is not good. So I don't think this is actually going to be I don't think this is going to see play in Zoo. we might see it in some sort of like mid-range demon deck, or maybe some sort of like control demon deck, and they maybe have some sort of like, give your demons plus, 2+2, or, give them, indestructible for a turn, so you can like use this and then make them indestructible, they all live, and then you go and buff them from there. But like in a straight up, like as we know with Zoo deck, I don't see this card being that great in that particular deck. And as a standalone right now, I also don't see this card being very good. But we also have to keep in mind that a lot of the card power levels are going way down. I mean, Frozen Throne was like a huge power spike to the game with the Death Knights and all of that stuff. So cards like this, they don't seem overwhelmingly powerful, and that's not a bad thing. Cards being just, you read the card, you're like, wow, that card's amazing. Those aren't actually the most healthy card. Like sometimes they're okay, right? Like sometimes a deck really just needs a good card to make that archetype flourish. But like, you know what I mean? We don't always need the most, like, we don't need a like power level spike in the first expansion of the new year. So I don't mind cards like this. Like, it's not great, but it's a cool card. And you know what I mean? Maybe we'll have some more demon synergy later down the line. Omega Devastator, the 4-mana 4/5 mech. So the stat line of 4-mana 5/4, 4-mana 4/5 is normal, or did I say 5/4? Yeah, 5/4 and a 4/5. Swap back and forth. They're just really good, like really good. So already the stat line of this card is great, and then the fact that it's a mech is even better. And it says Battle Cry. If you have 10 mana crystals, deal 10 damage to a minion, obviously not face. And it's a warrior card, which is weird because I thought the mechs were going to be coming to hunters, given it's the hunter legendary dealing with mechs, and warrior, they've been pushing some sort of like dragon warrior, and it's the year of the dragon, so I thought maybe we'd see a little bit more dragons instead of mechs. But for a 4-mana, like, this is a good static card. You play this on 4 against an aggro deck, and it's a chill win Yeti. It's chilling, and it has a mech synergy, and then the late game it turns into basically remove whatever the hell you want on the board. And hopefully the animation for this card is really cool. Maybe it like shoots down a laser or something like that. I'm hoping the animation isn't just like a fireball type of animation, which they use for like a lot of stuff. I'm hoping this has a pretty cool animation, but overall, like, it's not a bad card at all. It doesn't really have like any particular warrior synergies right now, other than, the Omega Assembly, Dr. Boom-esque. Like, I didn't want to mention that side of mechs. Like, warriors have mechs, but it's like you don't build mech warrior. Like, it's not thing. They're just kind of just like in the control warrior package. Moving to improve morale. This is like, I looked at this card, I'm like, it's not that bad. You pay 1 mana, you do manage to damage to a minion. If it lives, you get a lackey. And then I'm thinking about like, well, I only have 30 cards in my deck, right? And do I really want to top deck and improve morale? Not really. Like, and then it doesn't kill the card, and you get a lackey, and I don't know how. Like, we know what the lackeys are. If you've watched the first video, you get one of like 6 of them, I believe. And the card has to live, which means you have to use another card. So like execute or the Lancer. But like overall, this is just like, this has to compete with Omega Assembly. This has to compete with Shield Slam. This is in competition with other 1-drops that just kill minions or generate huge value. And this doesn't kill a minion most of the time, and it doesn't generate huge value. So it does neither of those things. So why would I play this card? This card just seems, in my opinion, bad. This just looks like a first bad card that we've seen. The only thing, I was actually in the shower this morning, and I was thinking about this card because that's what I do. I think about Hearthstone all day and all the cards. And the thing that I thought about is like, all right, they've made these lackey cards, but what if they make a card in the game that, like, when you get a lackey to your hand and then you make another card that gets a lackey, you never get the same lackey if you already have one in your hand. So you'll, like, if you make 6 lackeys, all of your lackeys will be different. And then there's a card in the game that says if you have if you have 2 different lackeys in your hand, it does this ability. If you have 4 different lackeys in your hand, it does this ability. If you have 6 different lackeys in your hand, it does this ability. Granted, I don't think that card's going to exist, but if that card did exist, making lackeys and playing cards like this in your deck to get like this big combo off with this card that requires you to have lackeys in your hand of all different types, now we're talking. We haven't seen anything like that. I have no idea if that's a thing. It's probably not, because I thought of it, and that must mean it's bad. But that's kind of my thought behind that. I don't think this card is good. It competes with other 1-drops of warrior cards, and those cards are just better. So with that, that's gonna wrap up our card review for all of the cards that we have now. As you know, more cards get released, we'll go over them, 5 to 10 of them at a time. I'm not doing like a 30 card review like I've done before, and I covered garbage cards like improve morale for 30 minutes. It's a waste of your time and opinion, it's definitely a waste of mine. So we'll cover the cards that I find interesting, and if the card isn't interesting, I won't review it. But if it's so bad that like if there's a card so bad and I choose to review it, I'm just gonna smash that card into oblivion. So with that, thank you guys for watching. I will catch you in the next episode. Of course, I'm Robert Warshak, and happy whatever the hell day it is.